Well, we're ready for another exciting day of motorcycle restoration. We have one more fairing part to do. We have some errands Karen's got planned. We have our grandson coming over today, and we have a doctor visit for me later in the day. This is going to be a fun day. I can just tell it's going to be a fun day. But every day is a fun day. Every day is good. The only day that isn't good is the day you wake up and you don't wake up. We didn't have that day yet, but it's coming someday. What a positive attitude this guy has. No wonder nobody wants to watch these videos. Anyway, I come out here, oogle, check out the battery tenders, have my coffee, and then see what Karen has planned for the day. It should be another day in paradise. Now I'm just trying to make a decision here, and it looks like, I guess I could do it this. I was originally going to hang the bike up and take both wheels off, but there's no real point. There's no advantage because I can only do one wheel at a time, because I only have one wheel balancer. I know what you're saying. Why don't you just buy another wheel balancer for 20 bucks at Harbor Freight? Well, but anyway, what I wanted to do, I wanted to see how bad of a shape this whole swing arm is in, because while I have the tire off, I want to clean, steam clean, do the whole thing. There's a lot of grease and grit, and we do have that one strip bolt that I have to deal with. But it's always good to make a plan one or 2 days ahead of time so I can think this through. But the next thing is to take care of that fairing. There's one more fairing to buff out, and then all of that is done. And the only part that's left, and we're still working on getting that stencil made up. And I'm really hoping Thomas Luciano is going to be able to help out with that. But every morning's different. We love it that way. Thank you, Karen, for planning out a great life. We always have to anticipate the weather of the day, but it's supposed to be above freezing the whole day. But we are expecting some nasty weather about 2 days from now, so I want to really try to plan around that. And look at the view out the backyard with Treezilla gone. Can you imagine? Look at the sky, is clear. If it wasn't 33 degrees, it'd be a riding day. All right, Scott, I'm going to have a cup of coffee just for you this morning. Hope you're doing well on that restoration, too. Our birds are hanging out in the bushes today. They're waiting patiently. Yesterday we finished buffing out the first part, and that just couldn't have been better. I was really happy. The only problem is it really did take a lot longer than I thought it would, but like everything in life that's worth having, including good dental work takes time. So we're never going to rush this, but here we are with the final part, and this is really a watershed. If that part gets buffed out today and we don't have too many errands on the shopping list, we are really going to be happy. Now all of these parts, everything on this table, pretty much ready to put back on a motorcycle. So the plan is, and I know people like this, the plan of a job like this is a big part of it. What I really want to try to do is get that part done either today or today and tomorrow, and then start on the wheel. And I know the wheel, Thomas Luciano is going to be excited about seeing that wheel. And maybe we can help him out with his wheel. I don't know. He's supposed to come down in the next couple of days. Now, the really big thing that helped us with this is the day we put that final coat of clear on, there was not a lot of wind blowing, and consequently there's not that much dust to sand out in the paint. And it should be a relatively straightforward sand out with 2000 grit paper. This is the material we found works the best. 2000 grit, the Rhino Wet Indasa sandpaper. I've got this particular batch came right from Amazon. So I'm just getting ready to put my gloves on. You can't make this stuff up. And Karen tells me we have a real issue, a problem. She was doing her little shopping list. She went to make me a cup of coffee. There was no more coffee. Oh, we got to run to BJ's where we buy gross amounts of coffee. It's ridiculous. But now I'm glad she caught me before I got started, because once I get started and I get the gloves on, I really like to go to town. But this should go relatively quickly. Yesterday's part took a long time because I was really fussy. Maybe this will take the rest of the day, but boy, will I be happy. That will really be... That's like not a watershed, that's a waterfall. That's like a big step forward on this project. And boy, you know, the thing is, every part of this project that I've done has exceeded my wildest dream. This carbon fiber stuff, This part that I thought I was going to leave flat black, glad I didn't. These parts were flat black at one time as I look around. Wow, we got the spare windshield. Oh my God, we're going to be... A project like this, it starts off slow and it builds up a head of steam. And then at some point in time, every day when I wake up, I'm dying to come down here. But right now, we got to head out. Because Karen always does get the final vote. If I had the final vote, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't still be alive. Well, today's errands, one of them is, and it's my favorite, going to BJ's. We're going to buy enough coffee that we don't ever run out again. It's not a coffee factory. You don't think we fool around. This is Karen's favorite coffee. Look how much coffee we have here. And this is my favorite coffee. Now look, what does that tell you? Gourmet coffee drinkers. And of course, one of Karen's favorite snacks, Pirate's Booty. We are eating healthy today. I just can't wait to get home and have a cup of coffee. I'm dying. See, I'm really addicted to coffee. It gives me that high energy level. Oh, we are back. We are back, finally. Coffee inventory, and we'll be ready to go to work. Now, we ducked a real bullet today. Running out of coffee in this house. Both Karen and I like our coffee, and she has her gourmet coffee, and I have my working man coffee, I guess, or whatever. But I always want to show, by the way, diverting from the real problems of life, I want to show one little section here in real time. I know, because what's happening, and I've noticed, you know, we have, it's coming up on almost 7,000 subscribers now, so I know there's new people watching, and they've never seen one of these videos, these, let's call them windy videos for lack of a better word. Well, until you figure out if this is going to be something that entertains you or you're interested in it, we'd like to, and you say, well, I'd like to see. Well, yeah, I don't want you to have to go back 20 videos to see how to sand and buff and whatever. So we try to include a couple of minutes. Usually I say it's in real time. The whole idea of the thing is no camera cuts. That's the bottom line. So here we are. We're using a soft block, some soapy water. This paint is now just a little less than a week old. It's been sitting up by a heating vent because we basically were doing this in the middle of the winter. I'm going to do one little spot here just to show. Most of it, I'd say this part, you can do about half of it with a sanding block. Since I did a pretty identical part yesterday, this part should go a little bit quicker. I'm a little bit more comfortable doing it, or who knows what, maybe the Geritol kicked in. I don't know. But anyway. Okay, so and this is what I always try to do, is show at least one of the things. Let's get that cleaned up. The idea is you can see how much time, how much effort went into this. Now I've got to get the whole part to look like that. I always like to show it up nice and close. Again, no tricky stuff, no camera cuts, and it's not like a Geico commercial or something. So I'm always trying to look at what I can do. There's areas I want to avoid, these high spots when I do it by hand. I want to avoid the edges. You can see some of the dust that was in there, but it's not a lot. And I want to make sure over any lettering or any trim, it's perfectly flat. So, nobody's going to ever do it for me, so I better get busy and start sanding. Part of what I want to make sure I get is that anywhere there's paint trim, and I'll just do this real quick just to show, we'll go over the lettering too, a certain amount of sanding with the block. And what I want as the ultimate thing is when I close my eyes and put my hand over here, I can't feel this at all. Then I know I'm real close to having it. I'm trying to avoid all these mountaintops. It gets marginally tricky, but certainly nothing, you know, you have to be a rocket scientist to launch a rocket to the moon to do. This is a lot more like mixing concrete. No matter how labor intensive any job is, or no matter how boring it is, at some point in time, I do what's coming down the home stretch, and we have this little part to do. and then run around looking for little spots we might need to address a little more. But once we are at almost at the point where I'm ready to celebrate. And knowing I have that inventory of coffee up there, you can't believe Karen and I are usually pretty good at keeping inventory. And she thought I had coffee, and I thought she had coffee, and we... Glad we're not running a restaurant. Anyway, getting these on, the whole purpose of this, and what I wanted to show over and over again, no matter how long you sand until you cannot feel that. If you can close your eyes and feel that, you got to sand some more. Or it means you didn't put enough clear on, or you didn't sand between the coats of clear. But once you get that technique down, boy, does that open a door. And I used to always tell Mark Morgan, when Mark was buying a bike every once in a while, and we'd be working on it here. He had the FZ600 that we did with a lot of parts that needed a lot of body work. Once you can do this, you can pretty much just go shopping for an old bike and then spend your winter drinking coffee. Now, the thing, again, I have said this a million times too, the thing I like about painting is there's no single thing I could do to this bike, or to any bike that I can think of, that would make it more of a custom, one-of-a-kind motorcycle that'll stand out in the crowd than the paintwork. It's just, the paint is always the first thing you see. So it's like, this is kind of simple technology. Now, I understand there are people that want to own super bikes, and they're big, the enjoyment they get out of it is that they can pass people going down a straightaway, or pass people on 106 or whatever. But the enjoyment I get from motorcycles, the real enjoyment is when I can put the bike in the driveway and sit there with my cup of coffee and know that it's as good as I can make it. And to me, there's an enjoyment knowing that I've done it, or that I've done 99% of it, or whatever. And it's hard to explain that to people. If you're not interested in that, well, it's hard to explain. That's all there is to it. But the people that you don't have to explain it to, I'd be willing to bet our friend Thomas Luciano, from having looked at his model planes. See, when you deal with the world of model planes is different for one reason. Everybody that builds model planes has to be talented. You can't not be talented, because you have to do it all yourself. You can't buy much of it. You buy the engine or the motor or whatever, but you've got to basically do it. Now, a motorcycle's different. I could just go up to Motorcycle Mall and buy any of the super bikes, any of the custom bikes, but I wouldn't have anything to do with it. It would just be an empty feeling as I pull up to Perkins and I see 7 more just like mine. I don't know. I don't know about that. But anyway, so for the people that do share our passion, and our passion is kind of unusual and unique, well, I think these videos serve a real good purpose. And for the people that don't share the passion, no problemo. All right, so we're all ready to actually just start buffing. Now, I left this unsanded. I have a little trick I'm going to show to do this in here. And what I did yesterday, and when I got ready to do that, I rolled up the old pad. I'm going to change the pad out, of course. I rolled up the old pad, and I'll show how I did that. That was just a really good trick. And this is all flat. Now, I left the edges. I did not want to go through the edges, and I don't. This is a great tip. I left the mountaintop, so I did the block, but not sanding the mountaintop. You'd never want to take and just hold the buffer on some spot that's I call it a mountaintop, or what happens, you really have a high risk that you're going to go through. So we're ready to buff at last. And it's the compound we've been using, 4CR 8065, and we get that at our local body shop supply, Gavin's. I have no idea where he gets it, but I know it's made in Germany. And these are the from Harbor Freight terry cloth bonnets. They absolutely, when I've tried several of the other ones, the other products, different brands, even ones that are a lot more money, these seem to work the best. I don't know if I'm just lucky with this or whatever, but it doesn't matter. But I do try to change the pad every time I buff a part that's going to be on a motorcycle that I'm going to keep until the day I die. Now, if I were flipping bikes every 2 weeks, I'm not sure but I want to go the extra mile, because for me, the pride of the motorcycle is how clean and polished the paintwork is. Now, the thing I've been doing, and I'm not sure there's not a better way, but it seems to work for me, is I try to cover the whole part with the compound and then buff each part, every area, as I'm buffing it until I have some kind of a residual shine. I don't know if that's the right word. And down in this valley, I'm going to use the old pad that I just took off. I'll try to show, in fact, I'll show that first. Why don't I just show that first? And I discovered that in the course, and I kept thinking, in the course of doing these parts, hey, that's something we ought to put on a video, because obviously it's a good little tip. But actually, all these tips are good. Now, the thing is, if you take a buffer, here's what's going to happen. And you try to get down there, what's going to happen, the edge of the buffer is going to bump up on this, and we're going to wind up with chips in the paint or something. But if you take this is yesterday's pad. And it's still got plenty of material on it, except it's a little bit dry, so it tends to get a little rougher and a little more prone to scratching. But it's still usable. So this was the trick I wanted to show. And for doing valleys, and this is a valley, where it's really inconvenient to get a buffer, because now that pad will go down in there. And I'll give this about 5 minutes of doing all the parts like this. And also along these edges. Now, I don't want to take a buffer and buff that edge, because what's going to happen, I'm going to go right through. It's exactly what's going to happen. But all of these residual little delicate areas, this has turned out to be a good trick. I didn't plan it that way, but sometimes you stumble upon something, and it's worth sharing. It's just anything you can do to make it easier, quicker, more fun. It's just worth it. That's all there is to it. Simple. And of course, back in the old days, if this were a model plane, I'd be buffing the whole plane by hand. There'd be no buffers, but all of the awards that I've ever won from model plane painting, there was never one buffer in the whole thing. It was all by hand. But anyway, that's a good trick. So what I'd like to do is do one little area by hand in real time. Now, if you press down so hard that you're slowing down the buffer, you're not accomplishing much. I like to let the buffer do the work. I'd say the amount of pressure I have on it now is maybe 2 pounds or whatever. But I've tried grinding down on it, especially when I was doing the hood of a car or something. It didn't make it any better, and it just puts a lot of unnecessary wear on the buffer. I always think you got to use a buffer, and this is a Harbor Freight. They're way under $20 if you have the coupon, probably more like $15. And they last. I mean, I go through a few every, I don't know, every couple of years. I buy 3 at a time, so I don't want to be in the middle of doing a job and I wear out the buffer. But usually it's the brushes that go. And I guess if you wanted to, you could get replacement brushes, but the brushes are probably $15 and a new buffer is $13. Knowing Harbor, and it probably just, if you put it back in the original box, they'd take it back. Anyway, not for what my opinion is worth. Now notice what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to avoid doing this, going right over that mountaintop, or going right on that edge. I want to do all the flat spots that I can. Let me get a rag. I may need a new rag. This one's not. And let's just see what, by showing it in real time, that's the whole ticket. If you see it in real time, you know there's no camera cuts, there's no fancy stuff going on. And that's one. I do need a new, I need a new, see when it's leaving a residue, I know I've used this already. But there you have it. And that is the basic buffing 101. But there's nothing quite as rewarding when you start to see the finish come to life. Oh my God, look at it. I can see that handsome devil of a face. That's not a mirror. That's the paintwork. Ah, that's beautiful. That's what makes it all worthwhile, and that's what sets your bike apart in a sea of factory finishes. Now, quite a bit of this part, just like the other one, had to be done by hand, and this day actually stretched out way longer than I thought it would, but then I remembered, yeah, it did yesterday too. So these are complex parts, and probably I made a really smart decision not trying to do 2 of them in one day, since I'm not the man I used to be, and I wasn't that much of a man to begin with. So anyway, I'm sure some people could do 2 in one day. This worked out great. These parts are ready, and we are ready. I will get up early tomorrow morning to take that back wheel off, and I'd like to allow some time in the near future to get together with Thomas. I know he wants to work on his wheel, so maybe it'll be totally symbiotic when we do that. Boy, I'm telling you, you could say what you want. That is really nice. Now, I always have to think as I finish up parts like this, we are now at a magic plateau in this job. Basically, except for the tank, almost all the paintwork is done, all the buffing, except for the wheels, of course, which we're going to be really detailing out and spending more time than an average person would on that, because the wheels are going to be the focal point of this job. Well, these really came out great. The only thing I still have to do here, and I forgot to do it yesterday, I've got all this, and it worked out great, by the way, all this tape all over the back, and I'll do that off camera, but where all these little tangs were and all these little tabs, because when these all go together, and I'm going to really try to be careful when I put them together that all these little tabs line up. There's little blocks of rubber, and we'll be replacing some of the hardware. The job just gets more exciting by the day. I can't believe how nice this is coming out. It really is. And I hope you've enjoyed sharing this with us, this little part of our life, that with our family and with our trips to BJ's and all our shortcomings as human beings, running out of coffee. Can you imagine? Anyway, do hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.